Hey everyone, welcome back to Conquering Algebra 2. This is lesson 37. Two concepts in here. The second concept is going to be working with parallelograms, finding segments and angles within a parallelogram. But before we do that, we're going to talk about chemical compounds and finding measurements there. So our first example is the chemical formula for water is H2O. If we have 3,600 grams of water, what is the weight of the oxygen? So the way we're going to do this is we are going to set up a ratio box. So this is how we get it set up. We have our hydrogen, oxygen, our total, we have the rate, we have the actual. Okay, and something to note with these problems is Saxon will always give you this setup. So don't feel like you have to have a periodic table of elements with you to look up the atomic weight for all of these elements. They're telling you right here. Another thing to remember is H2O, there's two hydrogen. So this is the weight of one hydrogen, but we have two in our problem. So let's keep that in mind. So as I start to put this information in here, like we just said, hydrogen, there's two of them and they have a weight of 1. So 2 times 1 is going to be 2. Our oxygen's weight is 16, meaning the total weight will be 18. And then another thing that our problem tells us is that we have 3,600 grams of water. So that's going to be our total. 3,600, and then we have to ask ourselves, what is the question wanting us to find? They want to know the weight of the oxygen. So right here is where I put my unknown, my x. So we're just going to solve this like a proportional problem, like every other proportional problem that we've done with a ratio box. So we have 16 over 18 equals x over 3,600, and we're going to cross multiply, and so we'll end up with 3,200 grams. Important to remember that unit of measurement as we finish. Shortcut, if you ever are just tired of cross multiplying in your calculator, sometimes these numbers are nice and pretty. What I mean by that is 18 times 200 is going to equal 3,600. So if I'm having to multiply 18 by 200, that means I'm also going to multiply 16 by 200, and 16 times 200 is 3,200. So that's a nice little shortcut if you ever get tired of cross multiplying, but I will say cross multiplying will never fail you. And sometimes these numbers won't be as neat and tidy. Like 200 was a very easy one to come up with, but sometimes it might be 175, who knows? So it varies, but sometimes you can use those shortcuts. And our second example is very similar, and this time we're dealing with ammonia. And it says that it has nitrogen and hydrogen. Notice that hydrogen says 3. I even made a little note here so that I can remember to multiply that weight by 3 because there are 3 of them. So if we have 510 grams of ammonia, how much does the nitrogen weigh? So plugging that into our ratio box, we know that nitrogen is 14. We know that hydrogen is 1, but there's 3 of them. So we're going to say 3, giving our total weight to be 17. And it says that we have 510 grams of the total compound. They want to know how much does the nitrogen weigh. So to set this up, we would say 14 over 17 equals x over 510. Okay, again, we talked about a shortcut with our math. 17 times 30 is going to equal 510. So I can multiply 14 times 30, and I can know that x is going to equal 420 grams. Very important that we list our unit of measurement here, grams. And me personally, the reason why I take the time to do the ratio box is because of these hydrogens. And we'll have other examples where some of the elements are going to have more than one. And having a ratio box and visually setting it all up helps me remember to multiply by 3. Because if I had just written 1, my total would have been 15, not 17. And so that changes everything. So for me, it's worth it to take the time and make sure I lay it all out correctly, because I would rather do the problem once and get it right rather than do it quickly and get it wrong. So that's just me. The second concept in this lesson is dealing with parallelograms. So the first thing we're going to talk about is their angles. And what we have to note with parallelograms, this should be here so that we notice that these two sides are parallel, these two sides are parallel, making it a parallelogram. We should note that A and C are going to be congruent and D and B are going to be congruent. And because we know that all 4 angles together is going to be 360, we can also know that angle A plus angle B is going to equal 180 degrees. So if they are on the same side, they are supplementary. And the same thing here, they're going to equal 180 degrees. So A plus D will equal 180, D plus C will equal 180, C plus B will equal 180. All of these around the clock, round robin possibilities, they're all going to equal 180 when we add them together. Another way that we can prove that is if we were to split this in half, knowing the whole thing's 360. And if these angles are equal and these are equal, that means this section will be 180 degrees and this will be 180 degrees. So that's another way that we can prove that. So that helps us with a shortcut for solving for missing angles. And now there's another part that we're going to learn when talking about their intersections and bisecting this. Okay, so in this one, we are not focusing on the angles, we're focusing on the diagonals. So here I have a diagonal. And then let's say I have another diagonal. When these two diagonals are coming across in a parallelogram, it has to be a parallelogram, these two are bisected, meaning they are equal, they're congruent, and these two are also congruent. So knowing that is going to help us to solve for missing measurements and to find the lengths of these segments within a parallelogram. So now that we know those two things about their angles and their intersections, let's go ahead and try some practice problems. Okay, so in this first example, there's a couple of things going on. They want us to find the measures of X and Y inside, but they also, in the detail part of this question, they tell us that angle BAD, so this angle right here, this whole thing, is 65 degrees. So they want us to find the measures of ADC and DCB. Well, what I can see is angle DCB, this one, is the opposite of this one that we just talked about. So I know that they're going to have the same measure, so I can go ahead and write that down as 65 degrees and make that super simple. And knowing that D is on the same side as angle A, it's going to be that supplementary. So 180 minus 65 is going to be angle ADC, which would be 115 degrees. So the angle part is done. Now we have to solve for X and Y. So solving for X first, we remember the problem doesn't give these tick marks. I did those because we remember that this segment and this segment are going to be congruent, meaning they're equal to each other. So we can set this up as X plus 2 equals 7, so X will equal 5. Same thing with Y plus 7 and 4, they are congruent, meaning they are equal to each other. So we can say Y plus 7 equals 4. So Y equals -3. So that is it. We have solved for all the missing measurements. In our last practice problem, working with parallelograms, they want us to solve for X and for Y. So this is going to be two different systems and equations that we're going to have to solve. So we need to find what X is first. So let's focus on these two angles, angle A and angle D. We know that both of these angles, when added together, is going to total to be 180. So I'm just going to take both of these and say angle A plus angle D is going to equal 180 degrees. So we have 10x plus 50 plus 5x plus 10 equals 180. So we're going to add our like terms right here. So we have 15x and then plus 60 equals 180. We're going to subtract 60. So 15x equals 120. Divide by 15. So x equals 8. So x equals 8. So that's the first part done. But we need to know this angle also. So 10 times 8 plus 50, so 80 plus 50 equals 130 degrees. And we know that angle A and angle C are congruent, so we can say 130 will equal y plus 10. So 130 equals y plus 10. We're going to subtract 10. So that's gone, and y will equal 120. All right, right, so we have found the measures of x and y. We know the angles. We know that our obtuse angles are going to be 130, which means our acute angles will be 50 degrees. So we finished. All right, and that's it for lesson 37. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to help out. And to my Algebra 2 students, I'll see you guys in class.